The welcome to Tuesday tea time. See, I'm gonna mute who's ever still unmuted. There we go. Letting the sound of the bell come to the ears. If you've already been meditating today, you can just return to the spot that you're familiar with. That place inside the heart and mind, acknowledging the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. That protection, that consistent, safe place of acknowledging the ability in this lifetime, that kind of spiritual ardency that we sometimes have because we have the ability in this lifetime to hear the Dharma, reflect the Dharma, and see clearly for ourselves that possibility of awakening. The Dharma is a jewel of priceless value, and we have the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, that when we really understand them, they are a source of all happiness. And the fact that others before us in the Sangha have liberated their hearts and minds. I like this quote by Tibetan Dzogchen master Gyaltsab Khenpo Rinpoche. Ask yourself how many of the billions of inhabitants of this planet have any idea of how rare it is to have been born as a human being. How many of those who understand the rarity of human birth ever think of using the chance to practice the Dharma? How many of those who think of practice actually do? How many of those who start continue? But once you see the unique opportunity that human life can bring, you will definitely direct all your energy into reaping its worth by putting the Dhamma into practice. And reflecting on these thoughts can generate a tremendous amount of respect that leads us to greater caring and a kind of ardency for each moment. And as we sit hearing sounds arriving at the ear from far away and close up, we can notice our senses. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, and the thought door. And we can easily come to notice the things that we become attached to. Feelings, conditions of the body. And we really can begin to understand the nature of permanence and that Nothing can prevent the universal process of birth, growth, decay, and death. And as we really start to understand this truth of impermanence on a breath-by-breath basis, we can understand the importance of our meditation practice. And so we seek other people with similar passions and similar experiences and have great appreciation for the Sangha, each other, and all of those who went before us. And as we understand that the ways of establishing mindfulness, those 4 ways, can be a direct path to liberation, as we've been talking about and seeing in the Satipatthana Sutta. We realize the importance of this ardency and the long enduring mind. And as we establish this mindfulness in the body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of the mind, and mindfulness of the dhammas, the various teachings, categories, these categories of experience, we establish mindfulness in them, mindfulness in the body, mindfulness in feelings. Then we can abide in safety. And when we're not mindful, we're not aware, we often get lost in unwholesome reactions and create suffering for ourselves and sometimes for others. And so we abide, contemplating the body, clearly knowing and mindful of what is arising and passing away, seeing it without judgment or attachment, mindfulness at the fore. We can contemplate feelings as they arise, pleasant, unpleasant, unclear or confused, various emotions that arise and pass away, come through the thought door. We can contemplate the mind that way, clearly knowing, being mindful and aware of what's arising as best we can. Letting go and freeing ourselves from desires and discontent. Developing mindfulness, developing freedom from attachment, being present and aware, in this moment. a kind of balance, a sustained, just the right amount of sustained application of effort. This idea of ardency, it's also a warmth of feeling, passionate and a strong enthusiasm for dedication, because we begin to understand the value and importance of this practice. Being with your practice in whatever way you like to begin, and stay focused either on the breath at the nostrils or the breath at the belly, a touch point, or a general openness to the body breathing, allowing mindfulness and awareness to be present, and noticing whatever comes into its field if you're more spacious, or letting that attention be specific on the rising and the falling of the breath. Every moment you can be aware and returning. As the body stills and the mind becomes more calm, we may also be aware of the knowing factor, clearly knowing or clear comprehension. We try to clearly comprehend what's taking place in this present moment, which involves investigation and wisdom aspects that are associated with mindfulness. We can see what's arising clearly. We may see clearly what the mind is doing, and with wisdom we can understand why, which can really transform the practice. It helps us realize that mindfulness is more than just being present, and it's with clear comprehension that we can begin to understand the appropriateness of what we're doing. Is what arising skillful or unskillful? In our regular lives, often we find ourselves in the middle of an action before we quite know how we actually got there. I'll tell you my story later about that. But in this practice period, we have a chance to see clearly and comprehend clearly, noticing some of the motivations in our thought patterns, even small things. Is this motivation skillful or not, useful or not? And this allows us the opportunity to be living loving kindness. We can often see that our practice isn't for ourselves alone. That it is for the benefit and the happiness of all beings. We might ask, well, how does feeling our breath or taking a mindful step or opening the door mindfully help anybody else? The more we understand our own minds, the more we can understand everyone else. And we can increasingly feel the commonality of our human condition, of what creates suffering and how we can be free. And it helps transform how we are in the world. So as we are more accepting of what's happening in this present moment, more peaceful, less judgmental, less selfish, the whole world is a much more loving and peaceful place, that much less judgmental and selfish. So as we inhabit with kindness our body, mind, the vibrating, resonating energy system, we can begin to understand how it affects everyone around us. The boat in the middle of the great storm with one wise, calm person that can bring everyone to safety. So as we contemplate one breath at a time in this moment, its impermanent nature, nothing to grasp onto, seeing what falls away easefully. With ardency and clear comprehension. Noticing that touch point, noticing the rising and falling of the breath, or feeling that open space of the body breathing and seeing clearly with mindfulness what arises at each of the sense doors, and knowing clearly through direct experience that it's impermanent, arises and passes away, is non-personal. But this isn't something we're just thinking about. We're being with it moment by moment. Sounds arise and pass away. Each of the sense doors that gets spirited by our perception of what comes to it. Sometimes noticing pleasant, sometimes noticing unpleasant. Always perfect opportunities for continued practice. Everything that arises is good for practice. Asking ourselves from time to time, what is the attitude of the mind? The heart and mind, the citta. Can we hold ourselves kindly, without judgment, in whatever is arising? We can wake up there in that moment, noticing if it's pleasant or unpleasant, or maybe we can't tell. Or we can return to our single object of attention. Reminding ourselves of that ardency, that interest. each moment at a time. What are we noticing now? Do we see the nature of suffering arising in it? Do we see that if we grasp at what we're noticing or push it away, that we create this grasping and clinging in our minds and hearts? Seeing this clearly, this clear comprehension is a moment of freedom, a moment of letting go, or however long it takes to release. But we have mindfulness and awareness present. Relaxed and at ease. Letting the naturalness of the parts of the body and areas of the mind be known and seen without judgment or shame about it, just seeing clearly, investigating and allowing wisdom to be present to see where we may be skillful and see where we can incline the heart and mind toward the skillful. Sometimes we can reflect on the teachings of the Buddha that we might remember. We can reflect on our own good deeds. We can let that inner smile uplift our hearts and minds. Being in this practice, in this precious lifetime, with these precious people. Letting go, noticing the non-solid nature of ourself in process. Arising and passing away, coming together and falling apart. There's an excerpt from The Life of Shabkar, a book that's teachings of an 18th century wandering Tibetan yogi. And there's a testament in there about the truth of change. And he says, "Another day I went for some fresh air to a meadow covered with flowers. While singing and remaining in a state of awareness, of the absolute view, I noticed among the profusion of flowers spread out before me one particular flower, waving gently on its long stem and giving out a sweet fragrance as it swayed from side to side. I heard this song in the rustling of its petals. Listen to me, mountain dweller. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but in fact, you even lack awareness of impermanence and death, let alone any realization of emptiness. For those with such awareness, outer phenomenon all teach impermanence and death. I, the flower, will now give you, the yogi, a bit of helpful advice on death and impermanence. A flower born in a meadow, I enjoy perfect happiness with my brightly colored petals in full bloom, surrounded by an eager cloud of bees. I dance gaily, swaying gently with the wind. When a fine rain falls, my petals warp around me. The sun shines. I open like a smile. Right now I look well enough, but I won't last long, not at all. Unwelcome frost will dull the vivid colors, till turning brown I wither. Thinking of this, I am disturbed. Later still, winds, violent and merciless, will tear me apart until I turn to dust. You, hermit, are of the same nature. Surrounded by a host of disciples, you enjoy a fine complexion. Your body of flesh and blood is full of life. When others praise you, you dance with joy. Right now you look well enough, but you won't last long, not at all. Unhealthy aging will steal away your healthy vigor. Your hair will whiten, your back will grow bent. When touched by the merciless hands of illness and death, you will leave this world for the next life. Since you, mountain roaming hermit, and I, a mountain-born flower, are mountain friends, I have offered you these words of good advice. Then the flower fell silent and remained still. In reply, I sang, "Oh, brilliant, exquisite flower, your discourse on impermanence is wonderful indeed. But what shall the two of us do? Is there nothing that can be done?" The flower replied, "Among all the activities of samsara, there is not one thing that is lasting. Whatever is born will die. Whatever is joined will come apart. Whatever is gathered will disperse. Whatever is high will fall. Having considered this, I resolve not to be attached to these lush meadows, even now in the full glory of my display, even as my petals unfold in splendor. You too, while strong and fit, should abandon your clinging, seek the pure fields of freedom, the great serenity. Understanding impermanence allows us not to be attached. We can live this life fully with right action and right speech, right livelihood. Knowing clearly and seeing clearly the impermanent nature of all that arises. And so we employ this ardency and this clear comprehension as we continue nurturing the mindfulness quality of the mind. This present moment awareness. This wakefulness. We nurture this opposite of absent-mindedness. And when we're lost or confused about what to do, we can simply come back to the present moment experience. Our minds are open and attentive, not controlling what comes next. This bare attention of non-interfering awareness. Recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, reminding us that awakening is possible. Remembering the reflection of our commitment to sila, or ethical conduct. And dana, our generosity to ourselves and others. Letting go of self-judgment, holding ourselves in kindness. Nurturing thoughts of well-being for ourselves. In whatever way you feel this sense of goodwill, this kindness, allowing it to envelop yourself. Having this feeling of being free from inner and outer harm, safe and protected. Letting this kindness include others. letting this openness of heart include a friend, include an animal being, a teacher, allowing this kindness to really be effusive in our being. May this mindfulness that we've been nurturing and this kindness act as a guardian to the sense doors, keeping us aware of what's arising through our senses and helping us not to get lost in proliferation of desires, letting us abide more peacefully in our lives, and letting this peacefulness, this kindness, flow to others. Neutral people, maybe even a difficult person. May we let mindfulness protect the mind from unskillful thoughts and emotions, and let these skillful thoughts, these skillful feelings of kindness, include ourselves and others. Above and below, all around, to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. All beings everywhere. May they be free from harm, safe and protected. May this heartfelt feeling pervade as we go through our lives. Not having ill will for others, including others in our kindness, and noticing as soon as we can when we may have a quick response that wasn't so skillful, that we can apply that kindness to ourselves as well. Realize it's teaching lesson in the moment and continue relieving ourselves and others from suffering. May all beings everywhere, above, below, those that swim and crawl and walk and fly, seen and unseen beings, known and unknown beings, may all beings everywhere know happiness and the causes of happiness, have ease in their lives, be safe and protected. Anicca vata sankhara upariwaya domino upakitawa meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence. They arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. And may the goodness of this practice benefit all sentient beings. Thank you so much for your practice. As we